Hi guys, thanks for tuning in today. This video is going to be all about my TBS Ghetto Pro. Now why is it called a Ghetto Pro? Because basically it's a TBS discovery that's been done up in the Ghetto way to make it like a TBS Pro. Now a genuine TBS Pro comes with its own brushless gimbal, camera switcher and a couple of other good bells and whistles. But all those things come at a premium, that's why I've done this Ghetto Pro. So what I have here is a cheap Chinese brushless gimbal with two motors for the pitch and roll, and that's mounted to a 3D printed mount to go on the front of the TBS Discovery. This makes it really easy to install on the front of your quad. I'll show you how to do this now. Now if you're familiar with the TBS frame, you'll know that you have the red spacers. This is what we're going to use to hold this onto the front of the quad. As you can see, we have two holes for our red spacers to go through. The holes on this particular 3D print were actually a little bit too small, so I had to drill these out to 5mm. And once done, as you can see, now these little red spacers will slide straight in and hold the gimbal nice and steady. And once I had drilled these holes, it was ready to be installed. And as you will see, the installation is really easy. Now all I needed was something to control the gimbal, so I headed over to eBay and bought myself a 2-axis brushless gimbal controller. This controller also includes the IMU, which will stick onto the bottom of the gimbal. Take note of those coloured wires, as I had a problem with these later on. In all, this brushless gimbal controller actually cost just over £20 delivered from China. As you can imagine, it took a couple of weeks to come here from China, but for the price I can't complain. But once it arrived, I decided to stick it straight onto the TBS. I used double-sided sticky tape to mount the IMU to the bottom of the gimbal. I then added my servo prongs to the pitch and roll at the top of the board. And the nice thing about this controller is that it can take up to 4S. So I soldered a power cable straight onto the power connections on the TBS bottom board. When it came to actually programming the brushless controller, I found it quite hard, so I ended up having to send it off to somebody else to get it done. But as you can see, once it came back, everything was working perfectly. But remember earlier I mentioned those cables? Now this is the only problem. Unfortunately, the cables that have been used with this brushless gimbal controller are actually made out of plastic, so they can be quite stiff, and sometimes they catch onto the gimbal. If they were made out of silicone, they would be much more forgiving. So bear this in mind if you do decide to build your own. So that mass of cables that you can see on the top of the gimbal there is actually part of the IMU, the brushless motors and the GoPro video cables, as well as the GoPro charging cable. I added a 5V UBEC to power the GoPro, so I know I'm never going to run out of battery. So let's take this out into the field. So as you can see, it works quite well. It's not Zenmu's quality, but then again it's not Zenmu's price, so I'm quite happy with it. A friend of mine is now selling these on eBay, so if you're interested in a ready-to-fly gimbal for your TBS Discovery, I'll put a link in the description. Just before I go guys, I thought I'd let you know that I've just ordered a Lumineer QAV 250, which is a miniature quad, so I'm hoping to use this for some extreme proximity FPV flying, so look forward to that in the future.